Hello, the internet. My name's Laura, and this is The Law of the Prince Charming, Chapter 17.1. Move, Tabitha whispers to herself. She turns and grabs the Sleeping Beauty by the arm. Move! Tabitha pushes the Sleeping Beauty toward the nearest window. Rose! Wild Rose begins to move again as they scramble across the sloped roof. Tabitha turns as the massive dragon draws closer. Its scales shimmer red despite the lack of sunlight. Its eyes glint as it swings its body forward and slams into the wall of the castle below them. There's a shock wave along the roof shingles, which flex and buckle beneath them. The Sleeping Beauty screams as they fall. Tabitha tries to reach for her, but she can't tell which way is up. Her shoulder clips a rafter, and she spins through the air. All around her is a haze of noise and dust that threatens to choke her. She hits something soft and springy. One of Wild Rose's webs stretches out beneath her hand, and all three of them have fallen into it. Tabitha tries to orient herself. She has no idea how Wild Rose got the card out while falling, much less use it effectively. The web stretches as more debris falls into it. It snaps, sending Tabitha tumbling down even farther. This time the landing is more bracing. Only instead of the noises settling, it steadily grows louder until Tabitha realizes she is hearing a roar. The dragon stands on the fallen wall it had created when it hit the castle. Tabitha tries to scramble to her feet, but she's unsure which direction is up as the world continues to spin. She reaches out to steady herself and finds Wild Rose's shoulder. The dragon tromps into the large space of the throne room, looking intently at the floor beneath it. The Sleeping Beauty stands up next to Tabitha, staring at the dragon. Sleeping Beauty, Tabitha tries to catch her attention. We have trouble, Wild Rose says quietly. Are you kidding me? Tabitha motions towards the dragon. Not that, them. Tabitha turns to see a massive collection of sleepwalkers coming over the bits of collapsed castle from the open throne room door. The castle begins to warp again. The rubble around them drifts into the air and begins rebuilding the fallen wall and roof, each piece combining seamlessly. Debris rises around the dragon, which snaps at it attentively. It draws its claws across the marble, cutting deep furrows into the polished floor and sending a harsh grating sound into the air. The Sleeping Beauty screams. The dragon looks up from the floor and slides its head closer to the Sleeping Beauty, who begins to scream louder. It reaches out with a scaled hand to grab her. Tabitha steps into the way, drawing her sword. The dragon's attention transfers to Tabitha, its laws shifting noticeably in its glow. It opens its mouth and flames lick out around its teeth. Tabitha shoves the wyvern's law of icecraft into her sword. An ice wall appears in front of her as the world turns into a mass of fire and heat. The Sleeping Beauty stops screaming, or perhaps she's just drowned out by the roar of the flames. Tabitha had tried to make the shield large enough to protect the people behind her as well, but she can't divide her focus long enough to check. It becomes harder to breathe as the heat sears into her lungs. Wild Rose reaches around her, gripping the sword as well. Tabitha feels the law of icecraft jump forward eagerly, becoming more solid in her mind, and the barrier strengthens as his focus joins hers. The fire vanishes abruptly, and the air rushes back into the space. The timbers around them have been reduced to ashes, and much of the stone is melted. The sleepwalkers have vanished completely. My people, the Sleeping Beauty cries, drawing the dragon's attention back to her. The huntsman appears through the repairing wall. He jumps onto a floating bit of stone and runs up the broken support beam before shooting a larger piece of floating debris with his web. He swings it around and releases it into the side of the dragon's head. The mythic turns towards the huntsman, smashing through the reforming wall with its tail as it does so. The huntsman jumps from the drifting support beam onto the dragon's back. Get the Sleeping Beauty out of here, Wild Rose throws the card into the air that lets out a brief but intense bout of rain that sends up a steam as it cools the molten floor. The Sleeping Beauty is on her knees, sobbing. Rose! Tabitha grips her sword. She can see the strong glow of the dragon's laws. Wild Rose pulls another card from his belt and shows it to her. It reads the tallest tower. You need to get out of range. Tabitha nods and guides the weeping Sleeping Beauty toward the fallen wall. The huntsman's body grows with giant strength as the dragon reaches around with his head to try and bite him. The huntsman punches the side of its mouth, and the fangs break away and vanish. An arrow strikes the dragon just below its eye, and vines explode out of it, encircling the dragon's head. It moves to claw them away, its tail and wings lashing out, knocking more of the magical repairs askew. Tabitha helps the Sleeping Beauty over the newly broken portion of the wall as Wild Rose screams, Fall back! The summoner's thunderbird swoops in from the slowly closing hole in the wall. and the huntsman grabs its legs. It carries him off the dragon's back. Wild Rose slams the cart into the cracked marble floor, and a shockwave of magic blasts out. For a moment, everything is still, and then the floor begins to rumble and split into a chasm directly under the dragon. The dragon shoots fire wildly as the floor collapses under it. Wild Rose tries to run from the growing hole, but trips on the bucking ground. The line of the dragon's fire sweeps toward him as the dragon grips the edge of the floor, trying to hold itself up. Rose! The huntsman releases the thunderbird and drops to cover Wild Rose as the fire descends on them. No! Tabitha screams. Fire hides them from view. Something dives out of the sky and slams into the dragon with a huge burst of wind. The dragon falls back into the chasm and out of sight. The silver lioness, in griffin form, lands with an air blast that puts out the fire on the huntsman. The chasm rumbles shut. Tabitha races over the debris as Wild Rose climbs out from under the huntsman. Is he? Tabitha starts. His living flame kept him alive, Wild Rose says. Tabitha surveys the blackened skin, melded with charred clothing and leather on the huntsman's back. Hi, everyone, the lioness says cheerfully. I can carry him. Tabitha and Wild Rose pick up the huntsman, sliding him onto the lioness. The huntsman groans but does not cry out. Burying the dragon will not hold it for long, Wild Rose says. Let's get out of here while we still can.